and then you can email it, or should we record it on the ground? Yeah, I'll just email it.
Very simple for a second. Welcome, Jayanti, and thank you for participating in this conversation.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's my honor.
Our theme this year is deep wisdom. It's a beautiful phrase, deep wisdom. When I say deep wisdom, what does that evoke for you?
It reminds me that the most important aspect of life is to be able to know myself. And it takes a short time in the sense that you learn to turn within and connect with yourself. But then to uncover all the layers that are there takes quite a bit of time. And I think that's the starting point of wisdom for me. And there are other subjects related to that. The second would be my relationship with the divine. The third would be my relationship with karma, action. How does that work? And the fourth would be my relationship with this physical world and time within that also. So these four aspects would take the subject of wisdom.
It's already quite a lot we can elaborate there. Deep wisdom and self-knowledge was where you began. I remember late in his life, the great psychologist, psychotherapist Carl Jung wrote a biography, and at the end of it he said that the older he'd become, the more of a mystery he'd become to himself. So we go on the journey to better understand ourselves, but as you were saying, it's not as if it's a straightforward journey.
It's taken me quite time to be able to know myself as far as I can at the moment. And I think I need more time to be able to explore more dimensions.
And your journey has been really quite a wonderful, as a youngster going from India to the UK, your family having such a significant role in the providing of Raj Yoga to, well, initially to the UK and then wider. Can you elaborate a little bit about that as a young girl, seeing what your family were doing?
As a young girl, I had the opportunity of first meeting the founder of the organization, Brahma Baba, before we left and migrated to the UK, specifically London. So that's been my home ever since 1957. And as I was growing up, the influence of the Brahma Kumaris was quite visible in my life. When we'd go to India, we'd connect with the Brahma Kumaris. They became my friends and later on my mentors and teachers. So they were always part of my vision. And then when I decided it was time to study deeper things than just the things that I could see with my physical eyes, again, I turned to the Brahma Kumaris because they were the people I knew and trusted. And then further, just a few years after that, when the invitation came to have a group of people from India come to stay with us, They responded with a lot of love. And as a result of that, the center started. So I think that they played a role that's brought them many, many blessings. So I'm very grateful for that.
Were there particular moments or illuminations that led you to make that deeper commitment when you were, what, late adolescent, I think?
Yeah. One was the starting point of deciding that I wanted to move further on this journey. And I was in a place called Mahabaleshwar, a wonderful place in the mountains just near Pune, which is where my original hometown is. And there, it was a very lovely setting where we were having a retreat. And that retreat had a big impact. And when I'd see people come in to this place, the town hall, where they put up exhibition pictures where people could find out about meditation, I'd see the people come in with a certain type of face, but when they'd be leaving, they were all smiling. And I asked myself, well, how come just 30, 40 minutes can change someone so deeply inside that they were smiling outside? And that was the first awareness that I had of what it meant to serve on a spiritual level. I'd never thought about what service meant. I knew that I wanted my life to be one of service, but I thought it meant helping others with health or with education, something like that. But on an inner level, that could also be called service, I discovered at that time. And so that led me on this journey.
So it was the visible effect of doing their meditations on their outer well-being that led you to think, here is somewhere that I would like to make my contribution.
That's right. Because I thought that, meditation was something that one did internally, and I'd only just started practicing it in an accurate way just a few weeks earlier. And so seeing that meditation could have such an impact that a person's attitude and perception and face could change was remarkable.
What happened after that?
I wrote a letter to the founder, and he knew me because he'd been seeing me since my childhood. And I said, I would like to surrender and have a life of service. And he sent a telegram in return to my letter. And I went to Mount Abu to meet him personally because that was his invitation. And there I had very beautiful, powerful, deep experiences of meditation. And a few months later, I was living in a center in India. And that was very powerful training to keep me on track.
So his invitation led you to feel confirmed in that decision that you had made.
Yes, because the first was the outer expression of well-being, as you beautifully put it. And now it was the heights of spiritual love and a vision that was unlimited that I could experience in meditation. And yes, so that was again a very powerful understanding and transition.
So a dedicated life at quite a young age.
My father challenged it and said, well, how do you know this is what you want to do 10 years later, 20 years later? And I was a bit cheeky, but I had a good relationship with him. And I said, well, my mother was 16 when she married you. And she changed her mind since? And he just laughed and said, okay, carry on.
That was very cheeky. And you anticipated his question?
More or less. Because when he first gave me permission, because the founder had wanted his permission before I could come and stay in an ashram. And so when he first gave me his permission, it was with a lot of caution. And he said, you have many choices in your life. You could do this, this, and this, but if this is what you've chosen, try it. And so I knew that he wasn't completely convinced. And so when I went back to London and we had this conversation, I knew that he still had a lot of hesitation.
It sounds like you had a lot of love growing up, both in your own family and a lot of deep respect for what your family were doing, contributing, and then as well complementing that these lovely friendships. So you early on became part of a community that had a lot of goodwill and grace about it.
I'm very, very fortunate, and I thank the one above for this because, yes, my upbringing was one in which there was spirituality and love, but also a certain amount of freedom to think for myself and make my choices. And so my mother at a very early age had said, okay, if you don't want to meditate, that's all right. And so she let us be free, me and my younger brother. And then she waited very patiently for us to come to meditation at our own time. But what she hadn't anticipated was it would be full time.
It's a lovely phrase, true love never coerces, which is
It's-
so true, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because true love knows what is best for you
Mm.
and will support you on that journey.
And that's the divine love. Much as that gets distorted in many presentations, the divine love never coerces,
Exactly.
deeply respects our freedom to respond. Having a childhood and early years full of folk you respected and loved, and in that circle of friendship, at the same time, now at this stage of life, aware of so many who don't have that. What does that convey to you about what leadership you might be able to offer in this era, in this day?
It is very sad to see how so many young people have to grow up with a single parent, for example, or they grow up in an atmosphere which is not very conducive to inner development. And they learn from their parents, of course, and sometimes it's the habit of reacting with anger or even further than that, aggression. So there's different situations, and especially post-COVID, young people seem to be feeling a sense of hopelessness, helplessness. And so I think that this is such an important time to be able to offer them hope for the future and to let them know that there is light beyond the darkness today. And if we can be instruments to show them a path that can help them move towards the light, it is maybe the most valuable thing we can do at this time.
You have particular plans and partnerships for that? Because I agree with you, it is aware of so many young folk growing up with that depleted early formative years, and you just want to help them.
I think that one of the things that's happening in India is that we have the largest, not just population, because we do have nearly the largest population, and we will do it in a little while, but also we have the largest percentage of young people at the moment. And that seems to look as if it's going to move in that direction for some time. And so in India especially, we find that it's very easy to reach young people and to engage them in processes and also projects that can channel their energy in something constructive that gives them hope for the future. I'm thinking in particular two projects that have been led by youth, and it's for everyone, but it seems to be youth that are taking it up in a very active way. And one is the whole subject of the environment, planting trees, saving water. And there's one young woman I know who lives in a rural area in India, and she doesn't need to. She's qualified, she has a degree, she could work in the big city and be part of life there in a very different way. And she chose to be part of a rural community, which is in a semi-desert area. And she's lived with them and continues to do so. And what she's doing is educating the rural community in all sorts of ecological aspects, starting with saving water, and then further plantation efforts and harvesting water, things like this. Things that are simple, but they escaped the attention of people. And so she's created this, firstly, of one community where all this has flourished and has helped the villagers to flourish, but also now others are coming to see this project and we're learning from this. And so the project is reaching further and further. That example of one young person, but you can see how if a person's motivated, it can help so many others. And so if a young person feels that their life is purposeful and being used in a worthwhile way, it's very beneficial. And I'm sure that many others could be involved in, for example, teaching street children. They bring together street children, and street children seem to have a community of their own. And although they're not with their families for many different reasons, but they've created community. Human beings thrive in community. And so they seem to create a little community also. And they start teaching them, firstly, basic hygiene, how to protect themselves, safety, and so on. And then further, they teach them values. And these children grow up with values which they would never have done otherwise. And so they're then able to go back into the world, not just within their community, and do something that's good for them and good for the country.
So that's the application of deep wisdom, isn't it?
It
In
is.
both those environmental projects and those providing an education pathway for those youngsters on the streets.
Yeah.
We met, we met earlier, but we did meet through the United Nations climate change conferences. So I think we may both be at the conference again this late November, December in
Yes.
Dubai.
I'll be there. And I
And
look forward to being with you there.
And we've endeavored to create a way of prayer and meditation to sustain and support the people doing the negotiating and people that are caught up with very long days. What are your reflections on those involvements, and what do they say to you about how we apply deep wisdom to the process of ensuring the planet is looked after?
There was one individual, and she's quite open about it. She makes a statement in public also, so I don't mind mentioning her name. But that's Christiana Figueres, who is the executive secretary from, I think, 2011 to 2016, something like that. And she would pray and meditate, and she herself applied spiritual principles in her work with the facilitators, with the people who are the negotiators. And there was one particular moment when the developing countries, looking for the right word, the developing countries were absolutely on one side, and the developed first world was on the other side, because there was this blame that you are the people who have been the cause of all this. So why should we give up our natural resources of oil, in particular, was a question at that point, just so that then you can have comfort and benefit. And the first world was saying, well, we didn't know about all this. And so, in a sense, they were trying to absolve themselves of that responsibility. But they'd also given a huge commitment for financial aid, for mitigation, for aspects of adaptation and so on. And none of that had been fulfilled. And so this was the trenches that they were caught up with. And she heard about the whole subject of victim consciousness and how that was such an oppressive state of being. And when she understood this in a very deep way herself, she had a very interesting realization that she was allowing herself to be a victim in another personal situation. And if she hoped to lead people into an agreement, then it was her mindset of going beyond victim consciousness and not pointing the finger at a perpetrator that could change this tension. And she did this firstly on an inner level. And then she spoke about this in a language that negotiators could understand and they could report back to their leaders also. And somehow the Paris Agreement came into being. I'm putting it in a very simple way, in shortcut, but it was one of the factors, I'm sure, that led to the 2015 Paris Agreement, which of course now we look back and say, well, because it was to be determined on a national level in terms of all the numbers and figures associated with emission and dates and so on. Most countries haven't observed what they themselves set as the targets. That's the reality today. And so I'm thinking that if we send our prayers and good wishes to those who are the negotiators and the people who make the decisions, I hope that they will be touched by this and come back on track to where they start moving in the direction where they try to help the whole planet and not just speak on behalf of their countries. Because while there's this division, the have and the have-nots, it's very difficult to make a breakthrough. But when we see the reality that it is one planet, we are all on the same boat, and even the water is coming already on that side of the boat, it's going to reach the side of the boat very soon. And again, we have seen the impact of climate change, both in the developing world, but also the developed world. But if people were to make the connection between the different dots and understand that it's together with cooperation that we can actually make a difference, there can be a breakthrough. Until then, it seems that they're headed towards things that are not very pleasant.
Deep wisdom speaks of a unified and unifying consciousness that encompasses us all across all of the boundaries and divisions.
Absolutely. We are one human family. We share the same home and we share the same future. That's one of the slogans that is being used in India during its year of presidency of the G20. That it is a very, very real situation, that that's the only way we can move forward.
There's some research that comes from the world community of Christian meditation indicating that the critical mass of people with a unified and unifying consciousness is growing. And I don't think that people are clear quite what the magic number is, but you get to a certain number of people that operate, live both spiritually and practically out of that unified consciousness.
Agree completely.
Better times can come.
Definitely.
One last question. What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to people enjoying the beauty of the self and seeing the beauty of each other. And life was meant for that pure joy. And through seeing beauty in each one, I think we can come to that experience of universal consciousness and also joy.
Well, I'm very grateful for our friendship, nurtured over different locations and places, including on the Zoom, and very grateful for this conversation we've been able to share today. Thank you.
It's been my privilege and honor. Thank you.